Chapter 33. Jane POV. As I returned from my run, Valentine sat at the dining room table, engrossed in my laptop. The fatigue from my exercise drained my energy, despite the lift in my mood. As I removed my shoes, worn out, I noticed the repaired hole in the fence, forcing me to take a longer route. Tomorrow, I resolved to address the inconvenience, contemplating installing a gate for security. Zelda, seated nearby, watched TV with barely audible volume, her smile and nod acknowledging my arrival, though her true attention lay on Valentine. With his cheek propped on his hand, Valentine glanced up at me, absorbed in the laptop screen. I approached him, running my fingers through his hair before planting a kiss on his forehead. Kneeling beside him, I peered at the screen, curious about his activity. "What are you trying to do?" I inquire as I stand, pulling a chair beside him. He exhales before meeting my gaze. "I want to know who my dad is, why he left us. But I don't know his last name, and Aunt Zelda said to wait for you," he explains. His swollen, red eyes betray signs of recent tears, and he sniffles, reaching for a tissue from the box nearby. Carefully folding the tissue into a tidy square, he discards it in the bin and washes his hands. Turning the laptop towards me, I search for Alpha Brian Smith. Images and news articles fill the screen as Valentine resumes his seat beside me, glancing between the screen and me. I nod, gesturing for him to observe the results. "That's your father," I confirm, and he redirects his attention to the screen. "We have the same eyes," he remarks, turning to me. His tear-dampened amber eyes meet mine, prompting a somber nod from me. "Yes, you inherited his eyes. It's a genetic trait passed down from the male side," I explain gently as he gazes back at the images of his father. "When I became pregnant with you, I didn't know your father was my mate. We met at an alpha meeting. Both of us were drinking, and that's when it happened," I recount, revealing the circumstances of his conception. "So you kissed, and I was created?" he asks, a hint of humor in his tone, echoed by Zelda's chuckle from behind me. "Yep, that pretty much sums it up," I confirm with a smile. "So if you didn't know he was your mate, how did we end up rogue?" he queries further. "Because my father kicked me out. He thought I was a rogue whore, and when I refused to terminate the pregnancy, I chose to keep you," I explain frankly, recounting the difficult circumstances that led to our rogue status. "So, I am the reason you are a rogue?" he questions, his expression thoughtful. "No, I am. Me being a rogue is not your fault, and I would choose you every time. If I could go back, I would still choose you. You're my life," I reassure him, placing a tender hand on his cheek and gently stroking it with my thumb. He absorbs my words, his brow furrowing as he ponders. I continue, anticipating his next question. "Why were you at an alpha meeting?" "Because I used to be an alpha. I was next in line to take over my father's pack," I explain, revealing a piece of my past. He appears even more puzzled by my revelation. "So, did you only just find out my dad was your mate?" he queries. I sigh, feeling the weight of the past as I rub my eyes before shaking my head slightly. "I've known for a while. When I first found out I was pregnant, I tried to tell your father, but he didn't believe me. Later, a couple of years passed, and I saw him again. However, your dad was exhausted and had consumed too much alcohol, so he didn't recognize me. He was confused, and I think he believed I broke into his house. Before I could explain about you, he expelled me from his territory," I explain, recounting the complexities of our history. "So, you never had a chance to tell him. How long ago?" he asks, seeking clarification. "Nearly 4 years ago now, when you were just a baby," I confirm. His brow furrows deeper as he processes the information. Then, he brings up something he overheard. "So, you have known all that time, but I heard Auntie Margaret say that Grandma Carmela died from not being with her mate, that not having your mate can kill you." I bite my lip, grappling with how to respond. "You shouldn't listen to adult conversations, sweetie," I deflect gently. "But is it true? Did she die because her mate didn't want her?" he persists, his voice tinged with concern. I nod sadly, unable to meet his gaze, confirming the truth of his inquiry. "But it won't happen to me. I have you to live for." "I won't die, Valentine. I have too much to live for, with you being the biggest reason," I assure him, emphasizing the strength of our bond. He nods, absorbing my words, and returns his focus to the screen. Clicking on some photos, he enlarges them to scrutinize his father's features more closely, the images becoming clearer. Am I like him? He wonders aloud. You are so much better than he will ever be, I respond without hesitation, emphasizing his inherent goodness. So, he is a bad man? He seeks confirmation. I pause, carefully considering my response. He made some bad choices, but that doesn't define who you are, I explain gently, trying to navigate the complexities of familial ties and personal identity. No, I don't think so. Well, I don't think it is intentional. I think he is just perceived that way, kind of like how I am perceived to have done something wrong. People believe things about others that may not be true. It's not fair, but it happens sometimes, Valentin reflects, displaying empathy and understanding beyond his years. I have seen him on the news fighting, and I saw him in the papers. I thought something was off about him. I always felt funny when I saw his picture, but I didn't realize he was my dad, Valentin shares, his words carrying a mix of realization and uncertainty. We recognize our own family. It's built into us to recognize family, I affirm, acknowledging the innate connection that binds us to our kin, even when we're unaware of it. So, he would know I was his son just by seeing me? Valentin queries, grappling with the weight of this revelation. Yes, and that's why I can't let you meet him, I admit, a tinge of sadness evident in my voice. Because he will take me from you? Valentin guesses, his understanding dawning. I nod silently, confirming his assumption. Valentin falls into contemplative silence, his gaze fixed on the screen, studying the image of his father standing outside the hotel he owned. I can print his picture off for you if you want, he offers gently, glancing over at me with a bittersweet smile. Touched by his empathy and maturity, I return his smile gratefully. Thank you, Valentin. That would mean a lot to me, I respond softly, appreciating his gesture of understanding and compassion. That's okay. I think I will go to bed now, Valentin announces, rising from his seat and taking the laptop with him. He leans down to kiss my cheek before turning to Zelda, who sits on the couch. Night, Auntie Zelda. Good night, sweetie, Zelda responds warmly, watching him depart from the room. I'm sorry he asked for the laptop. Zelda begins apologetically once Valentin is out of earshot. It's fine, Zelda. I should have just told him, I reassure her, understanding her concern, but also acknowledging my own responsibility in the situation. It was the middle of the day, with Valentin at school, and the bustling lunch rush enveloped the restaurant. Amidst the cacophony of orders and chatter, an abrupt silence descended as Alpha Brian strode through the entrance. From behind the front counter, I couldn't suppress an internal groan at the disruption his presence caused. A smirk graced his lips as he made his way towards me. Noticing his arrival, Zelda, with an eye roll, quickly joined me. I'll go check if the meat delivery has arrived. With the Alpha knob here, we don't need any more unexpected disturbances or missing truck interferences, she muttered, shooting a disdainful glance in his direction before hurrying off. Brian sauntered up to the counter, exuding an air of entitlement as he leaned casually against it, drawing the curious attention of everyone in the restaurant. Heard you had an eventful day yesterday with Officer Bruce? Brian chuckles, breaking the tense silence between us. Yes, thanks to you. And you can pay for Zelda and Margaret's fines, I snap, my frustration evident in my tone. I'm sure if you go down to the office and explain I am your mate, the fines will be dropped, he suggests casually, a hint of arrogance lacing his words. Of course, they will be, I retort sarcastically, rolling my eyes at his audacity. He chuckles in response, seemingly amused by my reaction, further fueling my irritation. You already knew that, though, didn't you? Officer Bruce told me something very interesting last night, Brian states casually, his words sending a wave of unease through me. My stomach drops as I recall our previous conversation, realizing that Officer Bruce may have divulged more than he should have. Seems I am your mate when it benefits you? Brian's tone drips with accusation, and I'm caught off guard by his sharp observation. Huh? I respond, feigning ignorance, though the guilt gnaws at me. You didn't happen to threaten Officer Bruce by using my title, did you? He queries, a knowing smile tugging at the corners of his lips. My expression darkens as the realization dawns on me. Indeed, I had resorted to using my connection to Brian to gain leverage in a difficult situation. Heat rushes to my face, betraying my embarrassment at being caught. Lapse in judgment, I admit, acknowledging my error. Oh, I don't mind, but if you want to use my title, I would rather it be because we share it and not just you throwing it around when you want to get out of trouble, Brian responds, surprisingly understanding. I'm sorry. I won't do it again, but I wasn't going to stand by and watch him take Carol from Zelda, I explain, defending my actions. He wouldn't have. He is a good man, Brian insists, prompting an eye roll from me as I turn away. His grip on my wrist halts my movement, and he turns me back to face him. Don't walk away from me, Jane. Are you trying to upset me? He questions, his tone tinged with a hint of frustration. I don't get a chance to answer when the restaurant door opens again. My stomach feels like it dropped onto the floor as Beta Martin walks in. He has his head down, fumbling with a set of keys as he stuffs them into his back pocket. Despite his lowered gaze, I recognize him immediately. Had to park in the parents with prams parking, no parking. His voice trails off abruptly as he looks up, his eyes locking onto mine. Shock registers on his features, and his eyes widen in recognition. I silently pray that he might have forgotten me, but his next words shatter that hope. Beta Martin's face lights up, a smile spreading across his features as he begins walking over to us. I knew I heard that name before. Jane, it's me, Martin. You remember me, right? It's been so long. I sometimes wondered what happened to you. I thought you left the city, Martin exclaims, rushing over and enveloping me in a tight hug. I feel Alpha Brian's startled gaze on us, observing closely. You must be mistaken, I try to protest, attempting to wriggle out of his firm grip, but Martin sets me on my feet and holds me at arm's length, his eyes searching mine. No, I never forget a face, a name yes, but a face. You really don't remember me? The train station, you asked to borrow a lighter. Then I took you to the pack house, Martin insists, his voice tinged with disbelief. I remain silent, desperately trying to extract myself from Martin's grasp while simultaneously avoiding Brian's inquisitive gaze. We looked for you, but couldn't find you. I even left a note with the security guards. Gosh, I can't believe it's really you, Martin continues, his excitement palpable. Wait, you two know each other? Brian interjects suddenly, his confusion evident. Our eyes meet briefly, and I quickly shake my head, hoping to convey my discomfort. My heart pounds in my chest, and I feel like I'm on the verge of passing out. Yes, she's the rogue girl, the one from the train station. Remember, we went looking for her. Martin explains briefly before turning his attention back to me. So, where did you go? Have you been here all this time? You work here. Martin bombards me with questions, his excitement evident. Oh, and your son. What was his name? Volcom. Gosh, her son has the freakiest eyes, like yours. He gestures towards Brian before continuing excitedly. The only person I have seen with the same eyes other than your father. So, where is he? Martin scans the restaurant, completely oblivious to my growing panic. Jane isn't a rogue whore. She doesn't have a son. Brian interjects firmly, causing Martin to turn his attention to him. Martin groans, holding his hands out in frustration. How do you not remember? I bitched you out for days about her for tossing her and her kid out, he exclaims, his tone exasperated. And what train station? I am lost. What is going on here? Brian demands, his frustration evident as he looks between Martin and me. Martin lets out a sigh, clearly exasperated. Jane, the rogue girl you chucked out of the pack house, remember years ago? We went looking for her at the train station. We left her car seat with the train guards, remember? Martin explains, oblivious to my silent plea for him to stop talking. The entire restaurant seems to be listening now, and Brian's gaze intensifies as he processes the information. You were at the pack house? Brian asks, shaking his head in disbelief. He appears genuinely confused before his expression suddenly darkens. Anger flashes across his features, his lip curling into a snarl as his eyes narrow at me. Wait, you have a son? You lied to me. Brian's voice carries a mix of disbelief and fury. I didn't lie, I protest, my voice trembling with anxiety. You have a son, Brian growls, his anger palpable. Martin quickly steps between us, attempting to diffuse the tension. Whoa, Alpha. What's got into you? Martin interjects, trying to calm the situation. She lied, Brian snaps, his finger jabbing accusatorily in my direction. My bloody mate said she wasn't a rogue whore. She lied. His words are laced with betrayal and rage, causing my heart to sink as I realize the magnitude of the situation. Wait, this is the Jane you were speaking about. This girl right here, she is your mate? Martin finally puts the pieces together, his tone incredulous as he looks back at me. Yes, she is my mate, Brian confirms, his voice low and controlled. Please keep your voices down, I hiss at them, aware of the murmurs spreading through the restaurant as people realize that Alpha Brian has found his mate. Is this some joke to you? Do you really have no morals, just like the rest of the rogue whores? You think I can just accept some illegitimate child? The press will have a field day with this scandal. Brian seethes, his anger boiling over as he confronts me with accusations. I never expected you to accept anything, now get out. I spit at him, unable to tolerate his insults. How dare he? He was just going to assume like the rest of them. He wasn't even going to let me explain. He jumped straight onto the rogue whore bandwagon. I won't have a rogue whore as a mate. He spits back at me, his words dripping with contempt. Brian, Martin snaps at him, attempting to intervene. No, she to me, Brian insists, his anger unabated. I never lied to you. You were just too blind to see the truth. You don't even remember me. Now get out of my restaurant, I retort, my voice firm with resolve. I was drunk. How was I supposed to remember you from the pack house? I can barely remember that night at all, Brian snarls defensively. You think that's the first time we met? Got no other memories you want to sift through, Brian? I tried to tell you twice before that, I retort, my anger rising with each word. What are you talking about? Brian demands, confusion evident in his tone. I tried to tell you, and you tossed me away not once, but twice, threw me out in the rain. You're no better than your father. No better than mine, I snap at him, my voice trembling with emotion as I confront him with the painful truth. Don't bring my father into this. What is wrong with you? You knew who I was all this time? All this time, you knew I was your mate. Brian's voice rises with fury, his anger directed squarely at me. Yes, I knew, and if you still can't figure it out, then go. Leave. I won't have you upset my employees with your prejudices, I retort, my own frustration boiling over. Oh, I am leaving. You're exactly like the rest of them, nothing but a whore, and to think I was willing to look past you being a lowly rogue. But I won't put up with you lying to me, he screams before slamming his fist into the counter. I flinch at his aggression, and I can see a few patrons ducking down, clearly startled by this sudden outburst. Some even hide under their tables as Brian abruptly turns on his heel and storms out, leaving me alone with Beta Martin amidst the tense atmosphere. I didn't think. Fuck, I am sorry, Jane. I will speak to him. Martin stumbles over his words, his gaze shifting towards the door through which Brian stormed out. It's fine. Nothing I didn't already expect from a Smith Alpha. Clearly, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I respond tersely, my voice betraying the hurt and frustration swirling inside me. With that, I turn and walk off to my office, tears threatening to spill from my eyes. I can't believe how terribly wrong everything just went. I feel a mixture of anger and pain. Despite everything Brian learned, he never bothered to ask who Valentine's father was. He seemed blinded by his own perception and judgment, unable to see beyond the label of rogue whore that he had placed on me. It's infuriating and heartbreaking to realize that he couldn't see the truth, couldn't see the years of torment I endured without my mate by my side. Escaping to my office, I lock the door behind me and try to compose myself, willing the tears to stay at bay. Just as I begin to regain some semblance of control, my mobile starts ringing in my pocket, startling me. With a heavy heart, I half expect it to be Brian, calling to continue our argument. But when I check the caller ID, I see that it's the school's phone number. Taking a deep breath, I answer the call, trying to steady my voice. Hello? I say, my tone as steady as I can manage. Hi, this is Peppery, Valentine's teacher. Is this Jane Summers? The voice on the other end of the line asks, Yes, this is Jane. How can I help you, Peppery? I respond, my mind racing with worry about what might be wrong with Valentine. Miss Summers, I was calling to let you know that we have called the police and an Amber Alert has been put out. Peppery's voice crackles through the phone, sending a jolt of panic through me. My heart races faster, pounding in my head, as I struggle to comprehend the gravity of her words. Suddenly, there's a series of frantic bangs on the door, and before I can even react, Margaret bursts into the room, her expression wrought with fear. Miss Summers, your son, he never returned to class after the break. Now, we have people out searching for him, but if you could come down to the school, and Margaret's voice trails off as she notices the phone slipping from my hand. My heart sinks as I realize the severity of the situation. Without a word, I grab my coat and rush out of the office, my mind consumed with worry for Valentine.